What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm the games adjuster Ethan Rodriguez, and today we are talking about the 3 to 4 player game of Spartacus. So this is one I picked up recently at a board game store. It was used but not punched yet, so I had seen that they were reprinting it. I had seen it at this particular store a few times before and been really interested. I'd never actually watched the TV show on Stars, I believe it was, but it just kind of seemed like an interesting theme, right? I like kind of the gladiatorial arena combat, ancient Rome kind of thing. So I thought I'd give it a shot. I've got a chance to play it a few times. I want to tell you guys what I think about it, especially with the reprint coming out soon, and see if that's something maybe you should jump on, or maybe if you should hunt down this old one. So let's go down to the table. Let me tell you what I think about it, and we'll come back here for those final thoughts. Here we go. Okay, to begin the game, each player is going to pick one of the 4 starting factions in the base game box. So here I have set up one of the factions, the red player, but there are 3 other factions here. You've got Kleber, Tullius, and Salonius. Okay, now each of these factions has a few items on their faction board. On the top, you've got the influence track. Players will decide the length of the game they want to play. A long game starts at 1. A medium game starts at 4, and a short game starts at 7. Most of the time, I think medium's pretty good. We'll get into that later. But you'll also have some starting assets. So this particular faction will start with 3 of these starting gladiators, 1 slave, and 2 guards. And we'll put those in the appropriate spaces: guard, gladiators, slave. We'll also start with 10 gold, which is these tokens here. And finally, you'll have a couple of special abilities. This one here says exhibition match, exhaust 2 gladiators to gain 2 gold, or fodder for the primus, discard 3 gladiators to gain +1 influence. Now, each of these factions has their own special rules. So you can see here he's got bribes and pandering, as well as a finger in every pie, different starting assets, 2, 2, 1, and 12 gold. Here 1, 2, 3, and 10 gold, different abilities, and then 2, 3, 1, 9 gold, different abilities. Okay. You'll also get a few tokens, one to track your influence, and then these 3 tokens here, these are for betting when we get to the arena phase. Okay, that's pretty much a setup. So you'll divvy out these are randomized, they're pretty much all the slaves are the same, there's different artwork. Gladiators have slightly different stats. After that, you're ready to begin the game. So we will walk through the 4 phases of the game. I'm going to really highlight the arena phase here momentarily, but let me just talk through the upkeep phase, the intrigue phase, and the market phase first. So upkeep, really not much to do the first round except for balance your ledgers, but normally as you go throughout the game you may be exhausting certain characters rather by flipping them over based on different abilities that show up. This one you wouldn't necessarily do that, but you could here exhaust 2 gladiators for 2 gold, so I could exhaust these 2 and get the 2 gold in the appropriate phase. And then in the upkeep phase, any uninjured exhausted cards are then flipped face up. If through another round they had been injured, they would mark that with one of these injury tokens here. They would need to roll a 6-sided die. On a 4, 5, or 6, the injury is healed, and they are free to continue to be exhausted as normal or used in the game. On a 2 or a 3, they will take another, or they will stay injured, and on a 1, they succumb to their injuries and they are killed and they die. Okay. So you'll check your injured people. You will roll for that. You'll exhaust other cards that are just normally exhausted, not injured. You'll also get to balance your ledgers. Each slave will give you 1 coin. Each gladiator will cost you 1 coin. So in this example here, to balance my ledger, I would get a coin, but need to pay 3 coins. So I would get a net of 2 coins. Okay. And so everybody would do that simultaneously, just the upkeep phase. Then we'll get into the intrigue phase. The intrigue phase, starting with the host player. Each player is going to draw 3 of these intrigue cards. Okay, so let's just take a few of them, just kind of show you what they look like. These intrigue cards are going to have a few different options. You've got some cards that are reactions. You've got others that are schemes, and still others that are more of these guards, which themselves are reactions. All right. Now, on your turn, you can play as many of these scheme cards as you would like. The cost of the scheme is going to be on the top left here. So this one costs 0 influence to use. It simply says +2 influence to target Dominus with at least 5 ready gladiators. Here I only have 3, so I would not be able to use it on myself, but perhaps if another player had 5, I might make a deal with them to play this on them and give them the benefit. Now other cards, like here, let's see what we can find. Let's go this one here. Cost 4 influence to play, you immediately gain 3 gold. Still others will cost a lot of influence that you may not have on your own. And in this part is where this game is rather unique in that you can negotiate with other players to give you their influence. And so if I have 4 influence, another player maybe has 8 influence, I could ask them to give me their influence and help me to play the card. And it's part of that deal. I might give them some gold or promise some things in the future. The deal isn't necessarily binding. I could say that, hey, I'm going to play this really good card. It's going to help both of us, and then play it for myself. So it can be kind of backstabby that way, but that is part of the game. So you can play as many of those intrigue cards as you would like. You have a hand limit at the end of the round based on your influence level. So at the beginning of the game, we'll have a hand size of 4. But as you lose influence, you go down to 3 and possibly go all the way up to 6 if you get to the last section there. These reaction cards can be played when someone would use a scheme to target another player. You're not involved and you want to cancel that. You have to have a certain amount of influence still, but you may, react to it and do different things. These guard cards can be used when you have a scheme that is targeting you. When you spend a guard card, whether you succeed or not, the card is gone. But what you'll be doing is rolling a 6-sided die. And on a 4 to 6, the scheme targeting you is foiled. On a 1 to 3, the guard fails, and you will have to deal with the scheme. Some of these schemes will make you lose influence, or perhaps lose gold, or perhaps give an injury to one of your gladiators and or slaves. All kinds of variety there. All right, you'll also be able to cash in these cards. You might get some cards that are not necessarily suited to what you need to do, like here, this epic spectacle early in the game. Probably not going to get 5 gladiators, so you might cash it in for 2 gold and take that immediately. You can always spend or trade gold with other players at any point in the game, but these cards, such as the ones in your hand, can only be cashed in the intrigue phase, and these other ones here can be cashed in when we get to the market phase. Lastly, you can use your special abilities in the intrigue phase, and there may be some other cards too that say, as a slave in the intrigue phase, exhaust to gain gold. But you'll have to have those to use them. Okay, so after you take your turn, the next player clockwise will go, and they will do everything they need to do, and then so on until everybody takes their turns. Then we move on to the market phase. In the market phase, first there is an open market where all the players can buy, sell, and trade assets with each other and or the bank. So as I was stating, you could trade in these different cards for the printed gold value on the bottom left. So I could get rid of this gladiator and take 2 gold. You could also trade with another player. Hey, Sally, I'll give you 1 gladiator for your slave. Okay, great. Or I'll give you 3 gold to get your gladiator. You can make deals like that. You can trade assets. You can also trade even these cards. Once they are played onto the table, they count as assets. But you cannot trade the intrigue cards from your hand. Okay. Then after everybody's done wheeling and dealing, you'll go on into the auction phase. In the auction phase, you will flip out a number of cards equal to a number of players. So let's clear this out here, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Let's say we've got a 4-player game. We'll put out 4 of these market cards. And if you had any abilities that would activate the market phase, you could do that now. Then players will grab all the gold in their hand, and they will do blind bidding for 1 card at a time. So we'll reveal the card. This one here is Mira. It's a slave. She has an ability that can be used in the intrigue phase that says exhaust to gain 2 gold. All the players will then bid on Mira here. A secret amount could be 0, could bid as much as they want. Reveal, and the highest amount is the winner and takes the card immediately by spending that money and going to the bank. Any losing bids will not be lost. If there was a tie, then the players would leave the money they initially bid on the table, and they would bid again with the leftover money they have, until there's only one person. If nobody bids for it, the card is gone. All right, and so after that has been dealt with, you would reveal the next card. And these market cards have all kinds of different things in them. So you've got some slaves, like Mira here. You've got the titular character, Spartacus, who's a gladiator and has different abilities on him as well. You've got weapons that can be in here, such as swords or maybe even this trident here that will give you different abilities in the arena phase. And you've also got some special cards like these nets here that will also be used in the arena phase. There's also armor as well. Okay, and so players will market or auction each of those one at a time until all four have been auctioned or discarded. And then finally, there'll be an auction for the host token. Now, the host token is very important when we get to the arena phase because they are going to have control over who goes into the arena, and they also get an influence right away. So let's now talk about the arena phase. So let me get this out of the way. And at the beginning of the arena phase, the host player is going to first gain an influence just for being the host. So there's very good reason to be the host. But then they will nominate 2 dominuses, which are the factions in the game, that's what you're called, to send a participant into the arena here. Okay, so the arena is this hex grid here, and the 2 dominuses that are chosen will be placed on the 1 and 2 spaces respectively. The host can nominate a dominus, and if they choose to participate, they will send one of either their gladiators or slaves as a tribute to the fight. So let's say we chose this one here, and they would select one of these 4 models that come into the game. You'll just select one at the beginning of the game to be your faction, and you'd place it in the appropriate space. The dominus that is the host can also choose themselves if it would like to. A dominus that is chosen can refuse to participate, but in doing so, they will lose 1 influence. So ideally, you want to participate and you want to be victorious because the winner of the combat is also going to gain an influence. But just so we can play out this example here, let's say that we've got one character here that sent this person, and then the other dominus sent this person here, and then we would get into combat. So combat is actually pretty straightforward, but there are a few little nuances to it. So firstly, if you have any of these market cards that can be gained, like these armor or weapons, you can bring 1 weapon, 1 special, and 1 armor, if you have it, with you to the fight. And as you gain these throughout the game, these are not particularly tied to 1 character as much as they are tied to a dominus. And so as long as the dominus has these cards still available, they can tie them to their gladiator. So let's say we'll give this guy all 4 or all 3 of these abilities, and this guy here will have nothing. And normally you wouldn't really have it like this. I'm just going to do it for example. Then we would assess their stats. So on the card, you've got 2 attack, 2 defense, and 3 speed. These numbers represent the amount of die of each color that you will receive. So let's just go ahead and grab those now. So we got 2, 3, and 2. And then this player here has 2, 3 defense, or 2 defense, and 3 attack. All right. And then you are ready to begin. So first, players will roll their blue die, and they will add up the sum of those die. And whoever has the greatest sum will choose to either go first or second in the fight. And actually, before we started the fight, players can make wagers, which is what these tokens are for here. And they can wager up to 3 gold to see if someone either wins. This is the 1 winner here, the 2 winners up here in this corner back there. And they can see if someone's going to get injured, which pays 2 to 1, or decapitated, which is also 2 to 1. Okay, so let's pretend no one wagered anything right now. We can always wager up to 3 gold in your wager, by the way. But after you roll your speed die, you'll assess who gets to go first or choose who goes first. So the higher number wins here, so 14 to 8 would mean that the player who rolled this, which is this player here, would go first, and they could choose if they want to go first themselves or send the other person to go first. When you move up to your speed value, the number of die you have. So this character would get to move 2, so they might move 2 straight ahead. This character over here gets to move 3, so they're going to move 3 ahead, and then they can start attacking. After you move, you have to attack, or you can attack and then move, but if you've moved and there's no one in range, without any weapons, normally your range is next to each other. Certain weapons like the trident will allow you to fight people that are further away, or even special weapons will allow you to maybe do a one-time attack using a different value other than attack. All right, and so when you're attacking, the attacker will roll their red die, the defender will roll their black die, and then they will line those up from highest to lowest and see what the results are. So here, The attacker has the red die. They were lower than the defense, so that means the attack did not go through. Had this been reversed, though, let's say it was a 1 and another 1, and this was a 6 and a 4, then that would be 2 hits that the defending player would need to take. When a player takes hits, they will need to lose one of the dice in their dice pool. So again, this example here, this is this player's dice pool here. They would need to lose 2 of those, so they might lose one of the speed die, one of the attack die. If they would need to lose more dice in the future, they could not lose the last one of a particular color unless those are the only ones left. If ever, after taking an attack, a player has to lose one of the final dice of their dice pool, they are injured if 2 of them are gone. They are decapitated if all 3 are removed. If only 1 is removed, the fight ends immediately, and you will see who the winner is. The loser is the one who lost their die. The winner is the other player. The winning dominus will gain an influence, and they will also gain favor. As a player gains more favor, as they get 3 of these favor tokens, they will become a champion. Also, whether they were injured, decapitated, or just simply lost, the host will get to decide the defeated player's fate. They can go thumbs up and say that they live, or they can go thumbs down and say that they do not deserve to survive the gladiatorial combat and perish. Okay, and they can kill that gladiator or slave, whoever participated, off. All right, and so after that, the upkeep phase will begin again, and then we will see what happens in the next round. A few more things here, as some of these special cards, like this net here, can be played and exhausted to win initiative and use it before rolling. When talking about initiative for the speed, there is a variant that is very popular, and I subscribe to this variant as well. Instead of rolling your total dice and just adding the outcomes, like here it's 9 to 8, this player is probably going to win most of the time. They have 3 die to 2. Instead, you're very much just like normal attack and defense. You roll all your die and compare the highest numbers. Here it's 6 to 4, meaning this player would go first instead of this player who had 3 more die, or 3 die. So that's a speed variant that you can play. I think it's a little bit more realistic and making it fair for an underdog to maybe win the fight. But other than that, there are some cards that will let you change the participants in the arena phase. There are also special abilities and things that are like that'll be on these gladiators, like letting you once per combat reroll a die maybe, or forcing an opponent to reroll a die, all kinds of things. So that's basically the game. Let me go back up top and let me tell you what I think about it. All right, there you go. That was Spartacus. Let me tell you what I think about it. We'll start with the theme. I think the theme is great. For an arena gladiatorial combat game, I feel like it does it really well, especially with the intrigue and the politics that I've read are from the show. But also you can imagine that that's probably what was going on back then. A lot of wheeling and dealing as far as trading gladiators and making wagers on these gladiators, the slaves and stuff like that. And I will mention, if that's a sensitive topic for you, although it's historical, that may be something to keep in mind, because it's got slaves and stuff like that, and that's what they did back in the day, and they kind of made these people compete for pleasure, and that's maybe especially nowadays, going to be viewed as pretty barbaric and stuff like that, and it was, it's pretty cruel if you really think about it. But for just putting that aside, if you're just looking for a gaming experience, I think it does it really well. It's a really fun, well implemented theme. Even if you're not a fan of the show, which I have not seen, I think it does a good job. The production is decent. So the insert's pretty good. There's a nice insert in there that holds the miniatures as well as for the cards. The gold coins they're fine. They're good thickness. My complaints are mainly around the lack of different denominations for the coins. It's all just 1 coin each. Would have been nice if there was maybe some 5s or 3s or something, just because as you gain more and more wealth, it kind of becomes a little unwieldy to have it all stacked up on this one little space. The card art is not existent. It's just kind of like different colors, blue, gray, or beige and red, with some text, which is fine. On the entry cards, at least. The market cards, you kind of saw them. It's a little dated, right? So I think this version came out maybe 2012 or so, somewhere around there, maybe later. So correct me if I'm wrong. But Yeah, I mean, you can tell it's a little dated. So I do know that the upgraded game does not have the kind of official license, but the same name, and they did like their own designed artwork, drawn artwork and stuff, and it looks pretty good. But if you are a fan of the show and you like the stills and stuff, this is probably going to bring back some nostalgia there because you'll get to see all your favorite characters and actors that were originally in the show. So that's kind of cool if you're into that. The miniatures themselves, they're fine. I'm sure if they were painted, they'd look better. They're kind of a little bent in my copy as far as like the trident and things like that, but they're serviceable. It's not a game where the minis are, those front and center and the big thing. The game's around what's going on above the table, and the arena combat, it's a little more of an abstract idea, anyways. So, it's not that big a deal. So on the whole, I would say production is average. Nothing to write home about, but it's does the job. It's serviceable, and again, it's more about the gameplay, which we'll get to shortly. So rules wise, I think the rules are pretty easy. Maybe the formatting of the rule book could have been maybe a little bit better, just as far as like setting up, because it kind of explains what everything is, and then it goes into the different phases, and then it kind of breaks down the combat, like quick version of combat and then lengthy example of combat. I don't know if maybe I would have rather had the lengthy example of combat and then the end of combat at the end of the explanation. But that's a minor thing. They give you some turn summaries. They didn't show those, but those do the job. There's a couple things that aren't on there, like when you can trade assets and things like that, or cashing in and using your special abilities. There's something that's not on the small rule summary that's in the big rule summary. And I know it maybe would have been hard to fit all that text on those smaller cards, but I probably would have even been fine including that maybe on like a bigger card that goes next to your board, just so that everybody has it. Because otherwise, if you really want the full breakdown of the rules or turn by turn structure, on the rule book, there's a nice breakdown, but some of the text on that is not on the smaller cards. So again, minor thing, but overall, it's you can figure it out. There wasn't that many things I couldn't understand or didn't realize, or couldn't figure out rather. And it's in BGG forums. It's an older game now, so there's hundreds of posts, and you can find your answer pretty much. As far as the gameplay goes, this is where it shines. I thoroughly enjoyed the negotiating. I've always loved negotiation games. Some of my favorite games are like Chinatown. Recently, I've been playing a lot more Twilight Imperium. There's a lot of negotiation there. So I love kind of talking with other people, wheeling and dealing, making trades, doing a little bit of the backstabby stuff. I really enjoy that. I kind of like those more interactive games, and this has that in spades. It's all about sending in your guys, trying to bet on the right guy to win. Maybe you do some tricky stuff to make people bet on you, and then switch out your person maybe, or switch out the other person, warrior or gladiator, and get them to lose, and then everybody loses their money. Making deals like, hey Sally or hey Bob, I'm going to do this cool influence thing with you. Will you help me? I'm going to help you and help me at the same time. Then you play it and you just help yourself. It's stuff like that. Or hey, I'm going to injure one of your guys, and then hopefully you make a bad roll. I'll make you re-roll your injury roll maybe, and then you might die that way. So there's a ton of that going on, and as much as I love it, I'm giving it a good rating for that. It's very group dependent. So if your group doesn't necessarily like that, or maybe kind of gets hurt feelings for being backstabbed, or will kind of hold a grudge about it, then this is definitely not the game for you, because that's very much in this. It's kind of a rat race to get to 12 points, and just kind of scratching and clawing at each other till you get there. So you're, you know, just keep that in mind is what I'm trying to say. The arena combat is pretty bare bones, but it's neat. The only parts I didn't really like is sometimes you kind of get in the stalemate dance where that, okay, if I don't win initiative, then I don't want to be close enough that they can come and hit me first because they have range and I don't. But if I do win initiative, I want to be close enough that I can run and hit them if possible. So as you lose speed die or defense die or whatever, you kind of start playing this game of chicken, like, well, maybe I'll just kind of run around a little bit and try to time it right, and hopefully when I win, then I'll run into strike and hit them first, and that'll kind of even the odds. So the combat can go a little long, especially if you're not participating. Now, I will say though, on the flip side, if you have a vested interest in who wins, you are paying attention, and it can be kind of shocking. You can have, I think his name is Theocles or Theocles, and he's got like 5.52, right? 5 attack, 5 defense, 2 speed. And I've got him the last couple of times we played somehow, and I'm pretty much wrecked shop with him. He's really good. But he might he might lose in the wrong setup. If someone comes in with really good speed and a lot of range, then they might be able to run in, poke, run away, and then kind of wear him down so that now you're even. So if you do get it adjacent to each other, it's not as easy as a wipeout as it was when he was rolling 5 attack dice. If he's already been poked at a little bit and brought that down. So it can be pretty interesting. I've had some, where I've just, wrecked the other person. They brought like a starting gladiator and I brought him, and nobody bet on decapitated, and sure enough, to just get wiped out, demolished, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe decapitated my guy. So it's just fun. Being the host, all the power that you have from that. Not only do you get an influence, which is victory points, but you could choose who goes to combat, and then you also choose the fate of whoever wins or loses, or who loses the combat. Right? You can just say, nope, you're out, or you can say, hey, you know what? I know that you're only gladiator. I don't want to pick on you. Give me 5 coins, and I'll let you live. Something like that. So definitely some extortion going on. Definitely some, again, wheeling and dealing, but it's fun. But in the wrong group, that may put off some, and probably not something people are going to want to play for 2 to 3 hours. So that does bring me to time. It says 2 to 3 hours on the box. It's about right. If you play the short game, like the 7-point game, up 7 to 12, it's maybe an hour and a half. I don't think it gets to 2. But if you play the 4-point, 4 to 12, or even the 1-point, I actually have not played the 1-point. I think that's a little too long for our group. But if you play that, it can definitely drag out. When we played the 4-point game most recently, I think that game had a couple new players. So that game went from I think it was like right at 3 hours. And they were new. So as you get more accustomed to the game and the flow of the game, then that'll improve. But if you start with the 1-point, it's probably going to be 3 hours minimum, maybe even up to 4. So just keep that in mind. Again, depending on your group, some people may not like that prolonged of a backstabby kind of feel for that long. So just keep that in mind. As far as the variety goes, I'm going to dig in a little bit here. There's really not that much that's going to change. Now you have the 4 different factions and their player powers. I'm talking base game only. There are some expansions that I know add a couple more factions maybe and some other cards. They're very hard to get right now in this printing. I don't know if Gale Force 9 is going to make that part of their new printing. I'd imagine they would, right? Because it's going to keep their game more popular and just kind of bring people back. But when they bring those out, who knows? It could be a year as they let the initial hype die down from the reprint and then reignite it with the first expansion. So if you have this copy like I do, you can go on eBay, you try to find those expansions, but they're crazy expensive, like $100 for one expansion, or maybe $150 for both. So out of the base game, though, expansions aside, it's just okay. The variety is going to come in more so when what the players are doing, what memories you can make with each other, with the different stories you'll tell. I sent in Spartacus versus the slave, and somehow the slave won. It was crazy. I just couldn't hit him, and he kept rolling 6s. It was amazing. I'm never going to forget it. That's the variety. Or I kept betting, and I thought for sure they were going to go, high on this number. That 0, and I bet like 5 gold. I can't believe they did that. That's going to be where those stories come from, and kind of keep bringing you back. It's not necessarily going to be in hey, I haven't discovered something about the game yet, because even in your first play, you're going to see a lot of the cards. The slaves are pretty much, there's a few different artwork. There's different artwork on all of them, I believe, but the abilities aren't that different. Same thing with the gladiators. There's some that have the same stats, the same ability. It's just different base, different name. So, it's not amazing, but again, it just depends on your group. You can make it something that's only come back often. So one more quick thing I do want to mention, aside from the review, is the rules I just thought of. If you get a champion after getting 3 favors, the champion, if the host cannot kill a champion. So if the champion loses, they're too much loved by the crowd that they could not thumbs down the champion. Also, if a gladiator has favor, the host can still decide that they don't deserve to live, but they will lose influence for the number of favor tokens on that particular gladiator. So some kind of incentive for the host not to make that person lose if they are a repeat winner in the arena. So keep that in mind. But that's pretty much it. Final thoughts, I would say I really like this game. It's definitely one that you have to have the right group, and I can't emphasize that enough. I kind of wish I had waited maybe for the new printing just because I don't have a particular tie to these characters. And if they do come out with the expansion for the new printing, I'm going to be maybe kind of trying to sell this one and get the new one and get the new expansions if I can't find a good deal on the old ones. But with that aside, even I still really liked it. I like the combat. I like the stories that come out of it. So for me, it's going to be a solid 8 out of 10. Something that I'm glad is in my collection now. It's something very unique that I don't already have. And if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then I would definitely recommend checking out the new printing. Or if you can find a deal on this printing here because it is older, definitely try it out. It's a unique game. You have to have the right group, but it's very fun. It's a good combo of negotiation and wagering and backstabbing and combat all together in a nice packaged product here and a good fun theme. So there you go. That's my thoughts. For more information on this, let me know what your thoughts were on the comments. Rather, sorry. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.